Hi, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Wanted to give you another tour of the bookshelves. This is the black bookcase that you see behind me when I'm doing my videos. It's on the left side. This will be the fourth shelf. So let's get started. So first in line is a book by William Shire, The Nightmare Years, 1930 to 1940. So if you have read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shire, same guy, that is one that I need to read. I have not read that yet, but this is his book, The Nightmare Years. So next book in line is called Faith and Betrayal, A Pioneer Woman's Passage in the American West by Sally Denton. So this is a kind of an autobiography of a woman who went out west on the prairie, and it's a fairly thin volume. I think it's probably something I could read fairly quickly. I got this at the local store, our local used store, Wiseman's, and hope to get to that one of these days. Third book in line, another one that I got at Wiseman's, is called Dark Tide, The Great Boston Molasses Flood of 1919 by Steve Puleo. And it was kind of funny at school. One of the kids had actually brought this up, kind of like it was like a trivia question to me, and I was able to answer it just because I had just bought this book, and it looked like kind of an interesting read, and one of those things in history that most people won't know anything about. And to be honest, I don't know anything about it. This will be the first for me, so looked interesting, so I picked it up. I do that a lot. Something looks interesting, I go ahead and pick it up. Another book from out of Wiseman's by Carl Anthony is America's First Families, an inside view of 200 years of private life in the White House. And I actually have a couple volumes by him, but this is this book. It's fairly thin volume, but it's got lots of pictures from the families of the White House. It's very well illustrated, as you can see, and I thought that was going to be pretty interesting. Next book in line on the shelf is Reaching for Glory, Lyndon Johnson's Secret White House Tapes, 1964 to 65 by Michael Beschloss. He's a pretty famous presidential historian, very well known. I've got a couple other books in the collection by him. I have not read them, to be honest. I have not read them yet. I just knew that his name comes up a lot on presidential histories, and so I picked that one up too. Here's another one by Walter Bornemann, Rival Rails, The Race to Build America's Greatest Transcontinental Railroad. And I've got some other books by Walter Bornemann in my collection that I've read. One of them was, if I can get the right one, I think it was the one about Lexington and Concord, and I read that one not that long ago. Pretty sure that's the book that was by him, but this looked like a good one, and so I recognized the author name and picked it up. I do that a lot. If I recognize the name of the author, I'll go ahead and buy it. Here's a book, Enduring Courage, Ace Pilot Eddie Rickenbacker in the Dawn of the Age of Speed by John F. Ross. And this one I actually picked up in the mall and got it real cheap at, what was the store? And I won't even think of it. Well, anyway, I didn't even know they sold books, to be honest, and I saw that and I was like, that looks pretty good. You know, another World War I guy. It's got some nice pictures in the middle. Nice black and whites. There's some of his World War I stuff. And thought it looked interesting, so picked it up. Here's one by H.W. Brands, The General versus the President, MacArthur and Truman at the Brink of Nuclear War. Now this volume's, it's a little bit beat up. I got that one used. I believe this was I'm pretty sure this was an Amazon buy. But I love H.W. Brands. His stuff is absolutely fabulous. Very easy to read. Just packed full of information. And if you ever get a chance, look up H.W. Brands on just YouTube and listen to some of his talks. His way of presenting history is just absolutely entertaining. The guy he's got a skill that very few can match, and I just highly recommend him. Here's a book by Rick Atkinson, An Army at Dawn, The War in North Africa, 1942-1943. This was volume 1 of the Liberation trilogy. It was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. I have not read this one yet. I read his first book on the Revolution trilogy, The British Are Coming, and it was very, very good. And so I had mentioned to my family several times I'd like to have this book and try this one out while I'm waiting on the next one for the Revolution. And sure enough, I got this at Christmas time, and so this is on my reading list for this year. I hope to get it finished, but I like his books. He does a good job with the military history. He has lots of maps in here as he explains the battles, which for me is very helpful. He's got lots of black and white photos and everything. So I'm looking forward to reading that volume. Okay, here's one by John Meacham, another pretty famous historian for the presidency. Franklin and Winston, an intimate portrait of an epic friendship. And this was a brand new copy. Can't remember where I got this one, but it's in really good shape. Based all around Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. And of course, that friendship allowed the Allies to win World War II. That was a key friendship. So here's another one, Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed by Jared Diamond. I got this one at the Books Revisited in St. Joe, and I read his other book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, which is a absolutely fabulous book, just talking about how having certain resources can definitely play a big role in your survival and or your lack thereof. But this is another book by him dealing with rise and fall of societies, and look forward to reading that one. I know his Guns, Germs, and Steel I use in my high school classes. We read several chapters out of that, and it's easy enough the kids really can pick up on it. This is a book from out of Wiseman's that I found for a couple bucks. The Missouri by Stanley Vestal, and it's just a history of the Missouri River and everything going on around it. Sorry about that glare. Next one on the shelf, Via, Western Express, and Stagecoach, California's Transportation Links with the Nation, 1848 to 1869 by Oscar Osborne Winther. This book I got from the Bedford Public Library when they were cleaning out their collection. And I told you last night I hate to throw away a good book. It's a real thin volume. It's only 158 pages, so it's a pretty short read, but looked like it was a pretty good history book. Here is a Dover Thrift Editions of Great Speeches of the 20th Century, edited by Bob Blaisdell, and this one had several famous names in it. Let's see here. Theodore Roosevelt, Vladimir Lenin, Gandhi, Margaret Sanger, just all kind. Alfred E. Smith, Winston Churchill, Eleanor Roosevelt, Cesar Chavez, just all kinds of big names, and those speeches, you know, stuff that would be real good for the classroom if you're looking at primary sources. And so I picked that up. Here's another one. This one's by John Dean, Conservatives Without Conscience. Another fairly thin volume. Next in line is America's Women, 400 Years of Dolls, Drudges, Helpmates, and Heroines by Gail Collins. And it looked like a good one on, you know, women's history. I don't have a ton of stuff on women's history. I'm always trying to you know, promote that, especially with the girls at school. You know, a lot of times our textbooks, they don't hit women's history very well, and so, you know, considering women are half the population, they were there. I really try to hit that when I can in the classroom, because I don't want the girls to feel cheated on stuff like that. I don't think that's right. Matter of fact, I got some History Day projects this year, a lot of them dealing with women's history, and that was really good to see that the kids are really recognizing the women's side of it as well as the men's. I was pretty tickled with that. Go up top here. This is just an old college textbook that I had, the Western Experience, Volume 1 to the 18th century, and it's got a lot of different authors. This one's the 7th edition, but Mortimer, Chambers, Barbara, Hannah Walt, Theodore Rabb, Isser Wallach, and Raymond Grew. Please forgive me if I mispronounced a couple of those, but I like to use this in my high school classroom. The chapters in there are pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to handle, so they act as a really good supplemental read, and it's got great pictures in there. Great color pictures, takes you through some church history, and I use it with like the Vikings and Charlemagne and all kinds of stuff with my world history class, and the kids usually like that for their extra read, their supplemental reads. Here's another one by H.W. Brands, again, one of my favorite authors, The Lone Star Nation. The ragged army of volunteers that won the Battle of Texas Independence and changed America. And I am real excited to read this volume. I've had it, well, actually I haven't had this one very long. It was one I had wanted for a long time, and so now I just got to make the time to read it. Okay, coming up on the end of the bookshelf here. So here's the next one in line. Empire of the Summer Moon. Quanah Parker and the Rise and Fall of the Comanches, the most powerful Indian tribe in American history by S.C. Quinn. And I've read a lot of things saying this is a good book, and I've had people tell me this is a good one, and I need to try reading that. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about the American Indians in the West, and I thought this would be a good one to pick up to help me with that, with that little endeavor, trying to learn a little bit more about the American Indians. This one is American Work, 4 Centuries of Black and White Labor by Jacqueline Jones. And it's basically what the title said. You know, this one's a history of labor. And I thought it looked interesting. Trying to broaden my collection a little bit. Alright, this one is an autobiography, or a memoir, memoir by Theo Makombe, The Race for Life, Memoirs of a Rwandan Genocide Survivor. And this guy had actually came to our church and spoke to our church, and his story is a very powerful story of just how lucky he was to even get out of there during the genocide in the 1990s. And they were selling this book at church, and so I bought that as not only a way for me to learn a little bit more. But a way to help him in he's a Christian missionary, and this helps him in his Christian endeavors. And anyway, he had a good story at church, and so I imagine this is going to be a good story as well. Here's a book I don't have the dust jacket for, but This I Remember by Eleanor Roosevelt, and pretty simple without the dust jacket there, but it looked interesting, so I picked it up. And now we're down to the last 3 books. First Lady in Congress, Jeanette Rankin, a biography by Hannah Josephson. And so, Jeanette Rankin, as we know, she was the only one that voted against World War I and World War II, and she continued that streak of protesting the war all the way clear to Vietnam, and was stuck by her guns, whether you agreed or disagreed with the decision to not go to war. You have to respect the woman for sticking by her sticking to her guns and non-violence. I appreciate that. I might not agree with it, but I appreciate it. All right, and here's one, Across China by Peter Jenkins. And I had read A Walk Across America and The Walk West. I read both of those, and they were very, very interesting. And he basically just walked across America, and he told his story of what he came across as he was walking across America, and I found that to be a pretty good story. And so when I found this, when the public library was getting rid of this one, I was like, I gotta have that. I bet that's a pretty good read, just like the other 2 were. So here's the last one on this shelf, the last one for tonight. This is called Vendetta, Bobby Kennedy versus Jimmy Hoffa, by James Neff. And I actually got that one at the Dollar Tree for $1. Nice hardback book. And anytime the Dollar Tree has books for $1 that are nonfiction, I usually pick them up. I like cheap books. What can I say? No, I usually buy all their nonfiction, with the exception of I do not like modern political biographies. I can't stand them. They're so biased, and they just don't interest me. When you get a presidential election, you know how you get several copies of that, and I do not buy those. And man, there are a bunch of them, but I don't buy those. But anything else that's nonfiction, I'll pick them up for $1 all day long. That's a good deal. But anyway, that is tonight's shelf. Again, it was the 4th shelf for the shelf tours. I went through those a little bit quick. I hope that gives you another idea of some of the books I've got. I told you last night it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of different subjects and even the quality of the books sometimes. But I'm proud of it, and I hope you enjoyed this. So have a good night and happy reading.